Welcome to Rock and Roll High School, your choice for in-depth and personal conversations with the most legendary artists in the history of contemporary music. Come with us as we explore the albums and songs that have become the soundtrack of our lives. Here's your host, Pete Ganbarg.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Rock and Roll High School. Our guest this week is one of the most influential and visionary figures in the history of music, a manager, label executive, booking agent, and music publisher, whose instincts helped shape the sound and business of 1960s and 70s rock and soul, Alan Walden. Working alongside his older brother, Phil, the Walden brothers are responsible for bringing some of the greatest music ever recorded to the world, from their home base in Macon, Georgia. Otis Redding, the Allman Brothers Band, Percy Sledge, and Lynyrd Skynyrd are just some of the artists discovered and or managed by Alan and Phil Walden. Alan's great memoir, Southern Man, Music and Mayhem in the American South, written with S.E. Feinberg, is a no-holds-barred telling of the triumph and tragedy of these iconic artists. At 82 years old, Alan is still going strong, shepherding the new Capricorn studios at Mercer University and a whole new generation of Southern talent. He joined us live from his home in Macon, Georgia, to talk about tales from his legendary career.
Sitting in the morning sun, I'll be sitting when the evening comes, watching the ships roll in, and then I'll watch them roll away again. Yeah, I'm sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide roll away. Ooh, I'm just sitting on the dock.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Rock and Roll High School. Very happy to welcome our guest today, live from home in Macon, Georgia, Alan Walden. Hi, Alan.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm great. I was just telling you and your son Roger right before we went on live here that I just finished your great memoir called Southern Man, Music and Mayhem in the American South, a great book written by S.E. Steve Feinberg. It is such a great story on so many levels because for those who don't know the Walden name and don't know the history of Macon, Georgia is not the biggest city in Georgia. It's not even the second or third biggest city. It's the fourth biggest city in Georgia, but its role in the history of music, thanks to you, Alan Walden, and your brother Phil, think about it. Otis Redding, the Allman Brothers, finding Lynyrd Skynyrd, moving them up from Jacksonville, Florida to Macon, Georgia, Percy Sledge, all of this stuff happening from the two of you in the fourth biggest city in Georgia, in Macon, Georgia. It's incredible.
Well, I tell you, it was exciting in those years for me to sign a lot of artists. And I signed like Etta James, Johnny Taylor, Clarence Carter, Percy Sledge, Ed Floyd, Arthur Conley, 55 artists, I believe we had at one time.
And when you're talking about signing, what's interesting to me is that you guys did it all. You were a record company, you were an artist management company, you were a booking agency, and you were a music publisher. So if you weren't working with them on the label side, maybe you were booking them, maybe you were publishing them. So your creative support of all these artists had many tentacles. It wasn't necessarily just as a manager, just as a booking agent. It was everything.
Right. We did it all. I mean, we did it all in those days.
But again, and I can't overstate this, you did it all from Macon, Georgia. Macon, Georgia was not known at that point as Nashville was known, or even New York or Atlanta was even known. It's like you and your brother, Phil, you kind of birthed this yourself. I mean, when you talk about Macon, Georgia, Little Richard's from there. He was your friend as well. But it's not like Macon, Georgia, the list of famous sons of Macon, Georgia, goes on and on and on. It's, for the current generation, it's Jason Aldean is from Macon, Georgia. The comedic actor Jack McBrayer is from Macon, Georgia. But more so, you think about Otis, you think about Little Richard, and you think about the Walden brothers and Capricorn Records. That's Macon, Georgia.
Well, thank you for those kind words.
Yeah, you are a proud child of the South. Your book is called Southern Man, and you've said that you love telling stories about the South, and that's what you do beautifully in this book.
Well, thank you again. I'm a very proud Southern man. You know, I grew up here and had numerous offers to move to New York or LA to go with bigger companies and all of that. But I chose to stay here in Macon and stand on my own 2 feet and sign the artists directly to me and be in charge where I could call all the shots, you know?
Yeah, and you never left. You know, it's almost like Macon becomes a character in the book. You know, you feel like you're at H&H, you know, having Mama Louise's, you know, grits and bacon, and you feel like you're at Grant's Lounge seeing the live music. You feel it. Like I've never been to Macon, Georgia in my life, but I feel, having read this book, that I want to go.
Well, we were definitely a music city representing a lot of artists. I mean, that was my goal, to have one of the largest stables there was. And the only management company that was near the same size as us was Motown.
Right, and that was all the way up north in Detroit, but here you guys are in Macon, Georgia. Let's go back to the beginning. You had a beautiful relationship that you write about with your dad, and your dad would later join you and Phil working alongside both of you. But you talk about this work ethic that you got from your dad, that you used to wake up at 1 a.m. to pick up that day's newspapers that you deliver later, and you got that work ethic from your dad.
He taught me to work. There's no doubt about it. When you go to throw newspapers at 2 o'clock in the morning all the way to 6, and then go to school, get out of school and run up this big hill to meet my father on Vine Avenue and ride 125 miles that evening. And it was hard work, you know. I mean, boy, I was actually very relieved when I got rid of the paper out.
But your dad, you know, not only were you two close as father and son, but he eventually joined the family business, and it wasn't you joining him; it was him joining you.
Well, I tell you, you know, he had a stroke and he was paralyzed for a while, and his left arm remained paralyzed. But he came into the office and started talking with Otis. The next thing I knew, my father was going out with Otis as his road manager.
Right. You talked about in the book, you talk about the healing power of Otis Redding. Obviously so tragic that Otis passed so young, but he seems everything you would want as a business partner, as an artist, and as a friend. He seemed like a wonderful man.
All of those. Okay, when he moved to Round Oak, Georgia, I moved out there where I'd be next door to him, where I could be around him all the time when he was off the road, you know. And of course, I went on the road with him from time to time to just have some fun, actually.
Well, this book is, you know, it's all about these friendships, and your friendship with Otis is as beautiful a friendship as I've ever read about. You know, you talk about that he was the first man that you loved outside of your family.
That's true. I mean, Otis changed my life. When I came into the company, it was just me and a secretary. That was the company at the time, you know, and Otis could have left and gone with a major company in a heartbeat, but he chose to stay there and be partners with Phil and I.
Right. Well, let's go back a little bit. Talk about, you know, Phil attending Mercer University right there in Macon, Georgia. And we'll talk about Mercer University coming full circle in a bit to Capricorn. But talk about Phil as a student there, and he started booking some talent. And that's how you guys all first met Otis, right?
He wasn't booking right off the bat, but he was president of his college fraternity.
Right.
When he did that, he was in charge of getting the bands for the fraternity parties. And that's where he got really interested in, hey, wait a minute, somebody ought to be booking these people. And he took a chance and went into business. And in those years, we were the first integrated company in Macon, Georgia. No doubt about it, you know. But we changed that whole thing.
Right.
we made people understand the whole racial situation was not what all the racial people wanted to make it to be.
Right. And that was very unusual for that time and place. And you talk about, for the most part, Macon as a city was more integrated than segregated. There was an incident later on with Percy Sledge, your artist, and you guys found him a house, and that house, unfortunately, was burned down by arsonists before Percy could even move in. But for the most part, what you and Phil did at your companies with Otis, you guys, were business partners with Otis. It showed how integration is a key to a successful society even back then.
Yes, we made it work, and I loved Otis Redding like a brother. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It almost killed me when he got killed.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a tragedy. But you talk about Phil attending, Mercer and booking for the fraternity. So there's a band called Johnny Jenkins and the Pine Toppers, right? Yeah. So talk a little bit about Johnny, because he seems like a character as well.
Johnny Jenkins was a left-handed guitar player who played a guitar upside down, and
predating Hendrix, right?
Yes, he was a Jimi Hendrix. I mean, he and Jimi Hendrix had played together at home before, because Jimi Hendrix had some sort of tie in Macon. And Johnny came out with being almost like Jimi Hendrix, and he was quite a talent himself.
Right.
But he had a very serious drinking problem, and it was hard to I spent as much time on Johnny Jenkins as I did the other 30 artists.
Right. And the featured singer in Johnny's band, the Pine Toppers, was Otis Redding.
Right. But when Otis broke free and decided to go on his own career, it sure made my life a lot easier.
I had Steve Cropper, also may he rest in peace, on this podcast a couple of years ago, and he talked about the day that Otis literally driving Johnny Jenkins to Stax.
As they carrying the equipment.
Carrying the equipment. And who was it? Was it Al Jackson who said, you got to hear this guy sing?
Al Jackson and Steve Cropper, they had like 30 minutes left over on a session.
Right. And then they called Jim Stewart down and said, you got to hear this guy. He's Johnny Jenkins' driver. And that was Otis Redding.
But they cut These Arms of Mine and Hey Baby in 30 minutes.
That first day, that's crazy.
These arms are mine. They are lonely, lonely and fielding blue. These arms of mine.
There's a great anecdote you talk about Stax, where you were shocked when you went into Stax and you saw Booker T and the MGs, famously an integrated band. They were drinking out of the same bottle. You couldn't believe that. You'd never seen anything like that.
I'd never seen that ever. It was like, man, I was like, hey, pass that bottle to me. If I'm going to be working with you every day, I'm going to need a drink myself.
Right, exactly, And there's a lot of talk about what it was like back in the 60s when, these artists were touring in the South. It was not easy. And you guys wanted to make sure that you weren't playing into any of this segregation or racism, and that, if there were racist promoters or segregated audience, you didn't want to be a part of that.
Well, we played for all of them. And the one thing about it was money was always the big push for all of us, and Otis was the hardest working artist I had. I mean, he wasn't just a singer. He was a performer. He was a writer. He was a recording artist. He was a producer. He had a publisher. He was just
a very, very special man.
Yeah, he was. He had more talent than almost the whole stable put together.
And you guys started a publishing company together. You know, music publishing, as I tell my college students when I teach about the music business, music publishing is a great business because a recording artist who makes a record, that's one record. A song could be 100 records or 1,000 records, right? And you guys started a publishing business together with Otis called Red Wall Publishing. And Red, standing for Redding, and Wall, standing for Walden, became the publisher not only of a lot of those songs, but ultimately of more rock and roll songs later down, became a very successful business for you.
Well, we even had producers of Arthur Conley. I was there today that they recorded Sweet Soul Music.
Do you like good music? That sweet soul music. Just long as it's screaming. Oh yeah, oh yeah. We are here on the floor, y'all. I'm going to a go. Dancing with the music. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Right, you did that with Rick Hall in Alabama, right?
We did it in his studio, but Otis had more to do with the production than anybody.
Right. Well, that's a great song. And famously or infamously, there was a lawsuit on that song with Sam Cooke's estate as well.
There was a lot of similarity in there.
A little bit.
Little convenient, but we actually, instead of fighting it out, we contacted Sam Cooke's management team and publishing team.
Right.
Made a deal with them for us to split the publishing rather than fight over it,
Right. Smart. The interesting thing as I'm reading about Red Wall Publishing is that Red Wall, like I said, stood for Redding and Walden, but Red is also your nickname.
Yeah.
So how about that?
I didn't let but 3 people call me Red. If you call me Red, you had fighting words on your hands.
But Otis was one of those people who was allowed to call you Red, right?
Oh, Otis could have called me anything. I mean, that's how much I loved him.
And then you had a brother named Blue too, right? So a lot of colors going on in the Walden family.
Phil was yellow.
Phil was yellow. Well, let's talk about Phil for a second, because a lot of times when you talk about like some rock bands with famous brothers, whether it's the Kinks or Oasis or Kings of Leon even, like the brothers have a love-hate relationship. You guys, you weren't artists, but the Walden story is also a story of 2 brothers. And like brothers do, you loved each other, but at times you hated each other.
Yeah. Yeah. We were known to have a few fights and make up and have some more fights later on.
Well, there's a poignant ending to your book where you tell about you and Phil as kids waiting for a school bus in the freezing cold and Phil wrapping you in his coat.
Yep.
And then towards near the end of his life, you visit him and you open your coat to him. It's beautiful.
And I told him, I said, come on in here and get warm.
That's beautiful.
2 brothers working in the same business for as long as we did, we were bound to have arguments, and have disagreement. But 99% of the time, we ended up solving the problems and going on working.
Right. And Phil, very sadly, Phil got sick and died of his illness. Were you guys able to patch up any of the rough spots before he passed?
Oh, yeah. We were off and on for a few years, and then towards the end there, we had gotten back close again,
Had he moved out of Macon, Georgia, Phil, towards the end?
Yeah, he had moved to Nashville.
Right.
I chose to stay in my hometown where I felt comfortable,
Right.
Phil and I had 2 different business approaches when it came down to the booking agency,
Right.
The one that was running the agency, and I don't know if you know anything about a booking agent, but that is a headache business.
Yeah, I mean, you write in the book that at one point there were you guys and there was Motown and that was it. But there's a list of artists that you guys represented as booking agents, or mainly you, Alan, as a booking agent, and it's a who's who of R&B music in the 60s. It's everybody. Let me read from it a little bit. It's Otis, it's Sam and Dave, it's Percy Sledge, it's Clarence Carter, Johnny Taylor, Eddie Floyd, Arthur Conley, Joe Tex, Booker T, Willie Mitchell, Joe Simon. It just goes on and on and on. Albert Collins, Clarence Gatemouth Brown, Maurice Williams, who was a son of Macon, like so many artists, Bobby Womack, Al Green, Tyrone Davis, Etta James. That's the history of soul music right there, and you're representing all of them.
Etta James was my first artist besides Otis Redding. When she and I got together, we made a strong bond between us, and I was booking her and found out that she had a contract with a New York agency, and they were ready to file a suit against me, which I didn't want at that time. So I ended up having to separate from Etta, but we remained friends,
Well, you speak very, very glowingly about Etta in the book, and not only were you friends, but she also recorded one of your songs shortly before her death in 2011. You had written a song with Otis called Champagne and Wine, and she later recorded that song.
Champagne and wine, that's what you're gonna get. Champagne and wine. What it's gonna be, just as long as you can see by me. I'm gonna be knocking at your door, yeah. I want the same love that I had before.
I loved Etta all the way to the end. And in fact, she put Champagne and Wine on her last album.
Yeah, and that album literally came out a couple of weeks before she passed away. But, back to Otis, because this relationship is so special. When you first met Otis and you and Phil are hanging around with Otis, Otis's dad was not very happy with you guys because Otis's dad was a pastor and he didn't love Otis singing music that was not church music.
He ran Phil away from his house. Told him no. He didn't want his son singing their rock and roll.
But Otis didn't listen to his dad, thankfully.
Otis knew what he wanted.
You mentioned in the book that Otis was probably the best-natured man you ever knew. So, going back to the segregated South, he probably had the right personality to kind of rise above it.
Well, he didn't push himself on people. He was just a wonderful guy, easy to get along with, outworked 90% of the people that were coming through our office. He did more than all of them. He helped the other artists by helping out with the management of different people,
Right. You write that he became part of the Walden family and that he made everybody feel special. You also write that he had the power to melt prejudice because when he first met your dad and your dad first met Otis, your dad was a product of the South back in the early 20th century, but you write that Otis had the power to melt prejudice. That's very powerful.
He did. Otis changed a lot of us. He changed our lives, He's the one guy that was eager to do anything to please you. He wanted to be a part of the management company himself,
Right. And we talked about Redwall, which is one of the first music publishing companies in the South, you write. And Redwall ends up publishing songs like Respect for Otis. You talk about the power of the song, and you write about how Keith Richards, hearing Otis's version of Satisfaction, saying that song Satisfaction, it's not my song anymore, it's Otis's.
I can't get no satisfaction. I can't get no satisfaction. I have tried.
And then I remember Otis saying the same thing about Aretha's version of Respect. He's like, that's not my song anymore. That's Aretha's.
She did a wonderful job of it.
That's the power of a song. And you're probably smiling a mile wide as the publisher.
RESPCT. Find out what it means to me. Oh, my God.
Talk about the Big O Ranch and where Otis ended up living.
Well, my father picked it out. He went searching for Otis a place to make his home. And in those days, we wanted to get him away from the city because there were still some prejudice feelings going around in those days. And we wanted to spare Otis of that, you know. And so my father picked out Otis's ranch in Round Oak, Georgia, which is on the outskirts of Macon. And there's probably 8 mailboxes, and that's the city.
Right.
He picked out this ranch out there. And when Otis moved there, I went out to see where he was going to live. And lo and behold, I ended up moving next door to him. I wanted to be around him, and especially in the country atmosphere.
Right. And you talk about, there's a very funny anecdote in the book about the great blues musician, guitar singer, rock singer, soul singer, Boz Scaggs. And Boz Scaggs ends up living out there.
He lived in my log cabin.
Right. And the log cabin was near the Big O Ranch, right?
Less than a mile.
Yeah, crazy. Let's take a little bit of a detour and talk about how Boz Scaggs fooled you, showing up, saying that he was a writer for Rolling Stone magazine and he wanted to write a story about the Waldens.
Well, Boz came to town, as you say, as in disguise as a Rolling Stone writer. He and John Winter were close friends, you know. And he came to Macon and pretended he was a writer, and I entertained him for like 3 days, I think it was. Man, after 3 days, I was wore out. Boz liked to drink as much as I did, and we partied quite a bit together, you know. But anyway, I fell in love with Boz, still love Boz, you know. Mm-hmm. His music today is still wonderful, you know. And
it didn't matter that he didn't get you on the cover of Rolling Stone. You're still friends.
Yeah, that's right. But he, you know, he came in as this writer, and I spent 3 days entertaining him, whining and dining him, you know. And I was like, and he goes, Al, I need to talk to you. He said, I'm not really a writer for Rolling Stone. And I my God, I wasted 3 days on this guy, and he's going to tell me now that he is not a writer, and I'm missing my picture being on the cover of Rolling Stone. I'm missing that all because this guy ain't really a writer. He's a songwriter, yes, you know. But Boz and I became super friends. He was a wonderful guy. He is a wonderful.
Yeah, his great talent still going strong today, for sure. And also still going strong today is Otis's widow, Zelma, who's still alive at 83 years old, never remarried. Does she still live on the Big O Ranch?
Oh, yes. Not only does she live on the Big O Ranch, but Carla, her daughter, built a house on the ranch, and Dexter built a house out there on the ranch. Mm. And Otis Jr. was the only one that didn't build a house out there.
And is Otis buried on the property?
Otis is buried in a very nice mausoleum, and he pointed to where his grave is to me and says, if something happens to me, that's where I want to be buried. Mm. And between he and I, it was kind of a private joke that he wanted to be on the entrance to the driveway so he could see who was coming to the
house. Well, you talk about how he had a landing strip being put in so he wouldn't have to drive from the Macon airport to the house. And unfortunately, that landing strip was about to be constructed, you know, a couple of days after he passed away.
Well, I tell you, the construction was to start the day after Otis's death. We already had made a deal with the contractor to build the dam and build a lake, and we were going to have an airstrip at the ranch where he could land his plane there and get out and send it on into Macon to be serviced. His death was just shocking to all of us. Nobody ever dreamed we were going to have an accident like that.
And in reading the book, it's tinged with such sadness and these tragedies, not only with Otis, who was the first, tragically, but later you worked famously with Lynyrd Skynyrd. You weren't working with them when they had the plane crash, but there was that sadness. You're the one who had to call Ronnie's father, Lacey, and tell him that his son died. And obviously your brother's work with the Allmans and the tragedy of Dwayne's death and Barry's death. There's a lot of tragedy around in this book.
It was, and it made you wonder, people wanted to say you're jinxed, if someone signs with you, they're subject to die soon, and I'm sitting there going, that's entertainment bullshit.
Right.
We were just a company that did a great job. And I have to say, we were the best agency out there for entertainers, if they were solo or black or white.
Talk about one of the great solo entertainers. There's a great story of how you first met Percy Sledge. Percy Sledge, as an artist, had your first number one in the business was When a Man Loves a Woman by Percy Sledge. Talk about the first time you met Percy Sledge. He was not singing that day.
He was a hospital orderly, and he had just come out of the room from giving a guy an enema.
So he wasn't shaking your hand then?
He said, excuse me a minute, let me wash my hands. He took off his gloves and he washed his hands and came back over and shook hands with him. And I said, Percy Sledge, you're going to be a star. He said, do you think I can quit this damn job?
And how much money was he making as a hospital orderly?
Less than $100.
And a couple of weeks later, how was he doing with under your tutelage there?
About 75,000.
No more enemas.
No more enemas. And Percy was my discovery, and he and I were extremely close friends until he died.
Yeah, he seems like a beautiful man. Seems like
He would do anything to please you. I mean, he was just that way. He enjoyed making people happy.
When a man loves a woman, can't keep his mind on nothing else. He changed the world for the good thing he's found. If she is bad, he can see it. She can do no wrong. Turning back on his best friend if he put her down.
There's so many colorful anecdotes in your life that you talk about. Some are beautiful and some are scary. You talk about being held out of a hotel room window by Sam and Dave.
Essex House in New York City.
Man, it's right down the street from here. I know exactly where that is, on 59th Street.
I was looking down 7 stories and being held by my ankles.
Why did they do that?
They had been tooting some coke, and I didn't toot coke.
Oh,
Then they had been tooting coke, and the next thing I knew, they thought it was funny to hold me out of the window.
Oh, hysterical! I'm sure you thought it was funny too.
Boy, I was a good guy. It cut out a lot of my traveling with the vans. That's the way.
Didn't Sam and Dave also abandon you in Philadelphia? And that was scary too.
Yes, I was at a Freedom Rally now.
Freedom Rally in Philly.
In Philadelphia, and I think there were maybe 3 of us white people there. And we're talking about, there was like 20-something thousand people in the audience that night, Sam and Dave thought it was funny to drive off and leave me backstage at the Apollo. They left the theater, and I come out of the back door of the theater, and the car's gone, and I am stuck
at the Freedom Rally, right?
Yeah, I mean they had this rally, and it was all like, "Hey, white people," and here I am, this little 110-pound
Southern man, right? Southerner.
wondering if I was going to get out of there alive.
Right.
I mean,
and you didn't speak to Sam and Dave after that for 18 years, you say.
yeah, I didn't want to talk to him. This is definitely.
You know, shortly before he passed away, Sam Moore was a guest on this podcast, and he was lovely.
Oh, Sam changed so much. He changed into a real nice guy.
He was lovely. Absolutely lovely.
Gave him all crap he did, and he and I remained friends until he was dead.
Yeah, yeah. You know, you talk about Sam Moore and you talk about Percy Sledge and you talk about Etta James and, of course, Otis Redding. That's all soul music, R&B music. But you and your brother both pivoted to rock music, which is not easy to do. And you became as successful in rock and roll and basically birthing Southern rock of the two of you, you know, your brother with the Allmans, yourself with Lynyrd Skynyrd. Let's talk about that for a minute, because there are also all sorts of colorful characters in the book surrounding you and Phil. Like, I love the character of Twigs.
Twigs Lynyrd was the best road manager ever.
And he was so passionate about his gig that he actually killed somebody over it. In Buffalo, there was a promoter who didn't want to pay, right?
Yeah, this guy really pissed Twigs off. And Twigs stabbed him 3 times, I think. You know, Twigs says to the guy, hey, let's just call it. And he says, it's too late for that. And he opens up his arms and blood shoots everywhere.
Right, and he died that day, the man.
He died that night.
And Twigs went to jail, but only for 6 months, right?
Yeah, I forget how long it was, but it wasn't. I think it was more like 11 months.
He was able to plead insanity because he had been up for 72 hours on speed because he was managing the Allmans on the road, tour managing the Allmans.
Twigs was a working machine. I'm telling you, he's the best road manager. He could collect money from promoters that didn't pay anybody. So he would go sit on the box office and say, "You're not going to put any tickets in there until I count them."
And you mentioned that he also passed away in a very tragic but colorful way. He died parachuting.
Yep, parachuting in Buffalo, New York.
Yeah, back to the scene of the crime.
Yeah, and. Like I said, he and Speedo Sims were the 2 best road managers I had.
Right.
When I gave them a project, it was done.
Right.
I didn't go back and check on it or anything. They did it, you know?
Right. They were the best. Talk about how you found Skynyrd. You go and you audition 13 artists, and Skynyrd was act number 13? The
day that I signed them. I auditioned in 1 year. I auditioned 187 bands.
Oh, geez. That's a lot of bands.
I mean, can you imagine how many clubs I had to go to?
And how many bad bands you had to listen to?
Oh, listen, and you know, I auditioned all these bands, and I went all the way back to band number 13.
What was it about Skynyrd that made you want to sign them?
Freebird.
Right. I mean, what's so funny about that is you write that all these record labels passed on Skynyrd even after hearing Freebird.
Yep. That was what was so disgusting about it, you know. People talk about the songs are weak. And right. I'm sitting there thinking that they just heard.
The songs are weak. Hopefully you save some of those letters, the songs are weak past letters.
Yeah, you know, they already had Give Me 3 Steps, you know, Freebird, Simple Man, all of these great songs.
Right. And you're actually responsible for one of Skynyrd's later songs with your songwriting chops on. That was your concept for Saturday Night Special, right?
Yep. Yeah. Saturday Night Special was my idea.
Yep.
Mr. Saturday Night Special. Got a barrel that's doing cold. They ain't good for nothing. Put 'em
See, and in those years, I didn't ask for writers' royalties. I just contributed to my artists' songs.
Right. I mean, because if it's successful for them, it's successful for you as their manager. But as a publisher, didn't you publish Freebird and some of those early songs?
I published all of the early Skynyrd records, both first two albums.
Well, like we said, music publishing is a beautiful business. So well done.
It doesn't call you at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Right. The copyrights don't call you up at 3 in the morning like the artists do when you're managing them.
Yeah, and they don't talk back. They sit in your drawer and make you a lot of money.
Right. That's why, I am a music publisher. I am not an artist manager. So God bless those copyrights. But you also write in the book that Ronnie says to you one day, hey, I have a new song and I want you to hear it, but I want you to go out in the boat and I want you to go out in the swamp and then we'll start playing the song. Can you tell that story?
When they would do rehearsals at their little rehearsal house out in the middle of the swamp, I would go there and listen to the songs and make suggestions. And they would put them into effect right away.
And that was the first time you heard Sweet Home Alabama, wasn't it?
Right. Sweet Home Alabama. I heard that while I was drifting down that creek fishing with my then second wife in the boat and drifting down the creek and listening to Sweet Home Alabama being written.
Right. And you say in the book that you were the first civilians to hear Sweet Home Alabama.
That's right. And I went home. I told the band, I said, get ready to go to Atlanta. I'm going to call Al Cooper, and I'm not going to ask him, can we record? I'm going to tell him we are recording.
Right.
Sweet home Alabama, where the skies are blue. Sweet home Alabama, Lord, I'm coming home to you.
Talk about copyright. Sweet Home Alabama, that's a pretty good copyright, too.
Yes, it made a few dollars from it.
Speaking of copyrights, you get a call one day from Ronnie, and Ronnie tells you about a band that's opening for him. Ronnie Van Zant says to you, Alan, there's this band here. They got themselves a bird.
That's right. There's a band up here trying to kick our ass, and they got a bird. You gonna love them.
And that band?
When I heard Green Grass and High Times, I knew it was 100% right.
That band was the Outlaws, and their version of Freebird, according to Ronnie Van Zant's prediction, which he was correct, was Green Grass and High Tides, and you end up managing the Outlaws.
Green grass and high tides forever. Castles of stone, soul and glory. Lost faces say we adore you. As kings and queens bow and play for you.
I just imagine I had two of the best Southern rock bands there were.
Well, what do the Outlaws and Skynyrd have in common? Talk about the three guitars, right?
Yeah, three guitars and that special Freebird, Green Grass, and High Tides songs.
Right, and both of those songs are well over 10 minutes, and they have to be over 10 minutes because they bring you on this journey.
And they still get played today.
Oh, my God. What song do you want to hear? Everybody, Freebird still today. I interviewed Henry Paul of the Outlaws and Black Hawk for this podcast. He mentioned that when he was unceremoniously fired from the Outlaws, he writes in his book that he was crushed. The phone didn't ring. And you realize who your friends are. The only people who called me, he mentions three people. The first one was Alan Walden.
All right. Henry and I are still close friends after all these years,
And he's still out there working, and God bless him.
Yeah, he's still out there working. He's 70-something years old, 72 or 73, I think. But Henry always listened and did what I asked him to do. That was the thing about it. He knew how to take direction rather than trying to invent it himself. So many of your artists get a couple of hit records underneath there, and all of a sudden I want to tell them what to do.
Right. Well, there's a section towards the end of your book where you talk about a bunch of bands that did not become successful. And a lot of them, would hire you as the manager and then tell you that they knew better than you.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of musicians have that attitude. The minute they get one little hit,
or even before they have a hit. This is a really hard business to have a hit in. And, your batting average is higher than most. They should be listening to you.
Well, I'm very proud of what I have done in creating great songs.
Talk about coming full circle in Macon. The Capricorn Studios are now the Mercer Studios at Capricorn, which is back to the college, the university that your brother attended, that Phil attended, Mercer University. There's now Mercer Music at Capricorn, which is part of Mercer University, and it's giving back to the next generation of musicians in Macon, and you played a big part of that.
Well, I hope so. A lot of hit records during those years. When you get hit after hit after hit, getting that second hit is the most wonderful feeling in the world.
Never gets old, does it?
No, man. You sit there and go, "Wow, I did it 2 times."
Yes. And then all of a sudden you're doing it again and again and again. It's like, well, you're really lucky. No, the harder I work, the luckier I get, right?
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I loved what I was doing. That was the main thing in my life,
Well, the legacy speaks for itself. I mean, again, there's the entire R&B section of your life and work and the entire rock and roll section of your life and work. And it's both as legendary as it gets. Or when Mercer has this studio now, is that the original Capricorn building?
It is the original recording studio.
Wow.
We not only had that building as a recording studio, but we had a fleet of offices up in another area, another part of Macon, where kept them kind of separated, where people coming in to do the agency business that wouldn't be interfering with the recording sessions, you know?
Right. But it's still there, and it's still part of Macon, and it's still given back to the next generation, which is awesome.
We worked hard for it.
Yeah, and it's given back now to the next generation of musicians in the South and in Georgia and in Macon specifically. So we're recording this, towards the end of February in 2026. You are now 82 years old. What is left? What are you looking to do?
Maybe write another book.
Well, the book is fantastic. Southern Man, Music and Mayhem in the American South, written by Alan Walden with Steve Feinberg, and it's fantastic. I recommend everybody who would like to learn more about the music and the relationships. It's all here. It's beautifully written, and I really appreciate you spending the time today, and your wife, Tasha, and your son, Roger, all of you for joining us today, and I really appreciate your time, Alan Walden.
Thank you so much. We enjoyed being here with you.
Maybe one day we can take a visit to Macon and pay you a visit in person.
Let's do it. I'll take you to H&H and get you some greens.
I look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Rock on.
Won't you give me 3 steps? Give me 3 steps of mister. Give me 3 steps towards your door. Give me 3 steps. Give me 3 steps of mister, and you'll never see me no more. Oh, sure.
A big thank you to Alan Walden, as well as his wife Tasha and son Roger, for joining us this week. Alan, alongside his brother Phil, helped build a bridge between Southern musicians and the entire nation, and in doing so, helped create some of the most indelible music of all time. From Sitting on the Dock of the Bay to Whipping Post, from When a Man Loves a Woman to Freebird, the songs that the Waldens brought to the world over 50 years ago are still listened to every day. Alan's great memoir, Southern Man, Music and Mayhem in the American South, written with S.E. Feinberg, is out now. For more info on Alan and the book, visit southernmanwalden.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time for another episode of Rock and Roll High School.
Rock and Roll High School is a presentation of Pure Tone Music, produced by Pete Ganbarg with assistance from Steve Leeds, Joe Pomerico, Dana Stenson, Aaron Manuza, Christina Katsamanidis, and Rich Mayhem. Please visit our website at rockschoolpodcast.com for past episodes and information on what's coming next. All rights reserved.